And then over the last bunch of weeks now, we've been in a series all in the book of James, kind of looking at our faith in action and what it means to have genuine faith and become a people that are really changed. Right. Not just having a faith kind of in word, where I would say, yeah, maybe I'm a follower of Jesus or I'm a Christian, but seeing that show up in life change. And one of the things that we've been looking at over the last bunch of weeks is how deeply and profoundly we are changed when we say yes to Jesus. James kind of doesn't pull any punches. He just goes for it and says, hey, this is how it is. When we believe these things, here's kind of the impact that it has on our lives, on our faith, on our love, and how we become different because of it. And so if you missed any of those conversations and you want to get caught up online, you can definitely do that on our YouTube channel. And I encourage you to if you want to jump in and do that. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to have a conversation that is deeply challenging to me in some ways, and I think can be life-changing, right, for all of us when we start to understand the reality of how value works, how God values us and how he sees us, and then by extension, how we kind of see each other and value each other. And the Bible and the way that God is going to introduce these concepts kind of changes everything about how we would naturally think about how value works and worth works. And James is going to challenge that right from the very beginning here as we jump into the chapter that he's talking here. We're going to be in James chapter 2 today. And if you have a Bible with you, you can open to James 2. And if you don't have one with you, you can grab one from underneath the chairs there. In fact, you can take that home with you. If you don't have a copy of the Bible, we would love just to give that to you as a gift and say thanks for being here with us. So you really can take it. No one will tase you if you walk out with it, right? So don't worry. Make that our gift to you. So here we are, James chapter 2. Here's what James is going to jump in and say in verse 1. He says, my brothers and sisters, believers in our glorious Lord Jesus Christ must not show favoritism. He says, then he gives this story, this example. He says, suppose a man comes into your meeting wearing a gold ring and fine clothes, and a poor man in filthy old clothes also comes in. He says, if you show special attention to the man wearing fine clothes and say, hey, here's a good seat for you, but say to the poor man, you stand there and sit on the floor by my feet. He says, have you not discriminated among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts? Fascinating passage here. And as I stood on at surface level, you kind of get the message of what James is driving at. He's like, hey, don't treat certain people better than others. But there's some stuff going on underneath the surface that I think we want to understand and see, and it's actually very challenging. And there's some really good reasons for why it's so challenging. Here's what I was thinking about this week as we started to look at it a little bit. We think about how our culture and our world determines value. It's kind of one way in general. Here's how it usually works. When we're thinking about how people tend to be valued, often we tend to think of it in this kind of format, in terms of how much somebody benefits a situation. So, for example, the classic one is work, right? If somebody brings a lot of benefit to a workplace, right, they tend to be highly valued or highly paid. Right? They're going to value you highly because you bring a lot to the table. You're worth a lot, right? In the beginning, when we're starting off, we're not very good at our jobs. We're not valued highly there because we can't bring very much benefit. What the Bible is going to do is going to say, hey, that reality, by the way, that's fine. That's not necessarily a bad thing that jobs would function that way. However, the Bible is going to say something very different about the relationship between benefit and value. The Bible is going to challenge this in a very deep and profound way. And really what it's going to do is going to say, if I understand kind of God's perspective, his wisdom that we talked about a few weeks ago, Jordan walked us through a conversation about godly wisdom or a wisdom that comes from above. God has already decided where to set the value of a human being. But before we do anything beneficial or not so beneficial, God has decided, and he said, hey, I am the one who created you, I made you, and I chose to make you in my image. I chose to create you with value and to be creative and be able to make a plan and to be able to think and project. And I look at you and I have chosen to set your value high up here. You are my image bearer. And by the way, even after you made some very catastrophic decisions and messed things up, by the way, I valued you in a massive statement again by coming to die for you. I sent my son to die for you so that we could have relationship. So God would look and say, I have already chosen and decided to set the value of a human being high, regardless of the benefit that they may or may not bring. And this is where this gets radically different. In a world that's going to say, hey, what is your net worth? That's your value. How many skills do you have? That's your value. Can you make my situation different? That's your value. Right? In a world that exists like that, God says, nope, I am choosing to separate these two. Because this is a game changer. I just want us to really capture this. I have chosen to separate these two, and you are not valued, and the people around you are not valued based on what you bring to the table or don't. You're valued simply because I've chosen to value you. That is radically different than what almost all of us have been kind of raised in and taught and been kind of enculturated in. James, though, is going to pick this up and drive this forward and say, when I interact with people based on their benefit or lack of benefit to me, right? If that benefit is high or that benefit is low, he says that is a situation that is going to create, that is out of evil that is formed, right? Because I'm operating not according to God's wisdom, but according to worldly wisdom, where the goal is to get ahead or to benefit myself, right? This is a game changer that James is driving at, and he's challenging us in a big way that when we interact with people, to do it based here, not here. A few weeks ago, my son and I were going to a basketball tournament. He's going into his senior year, so he did some travel basketball, and we were heading through Columbus. And we're driving, and it was a bunch of traffic. There was a stop lane of traffic, and we were in like slowed down but still flowing traffic. And on our way there to play a game that night, and we're making our way, and we see this stop and go traffic, and all of a sudden, this car out of nowhere gets kind of impatient and just decides, I'm done being in this lane. I'm going to come over into the lane that we were in, and just went for it. Had no idea, evidently, that we were there. Swung out into our lane. We were maybe like 20, 25 feet behind. They pulled out, and then we couldn't stop. They just kept going, hit kind of the back fender, and we're like, boom, okay, here we go, accident. Nobody was hurt. Car was drivable. It's okay, right? Don't freak out, don't worry. But this is right 2 weekends ago. We pull over, we exchange insurance information, begin to follow up with the insurance company. I have a lovely conversation with their insurance rep, right? And we made a connection. We talked. She was pleasant. She says, it sounds pretty clean cut. It sounds like the guy just kind of pulled into your lane and hit you. I was like, yep, that's right. That's what happened. I'm glad you see it that way as well, right? So we're on the same page. It's great. I'm feeling good about it, right? Good conversation with Kylie. Right, that's her name, Kylie. And then a couple days later, Kylie calls back, and she calls and leaves a message. Hey, Mr. Rodman, give me a buzz back. I've got some information about, where the liability landed and how it all is going to play out. I was like, cool, no big deal. I'm thinking, this thing's in the bag. We're done. We'll just figure it out later, right? It's good. Call Kylie back. Hey, Kylie, how you doing? Good, Mr. Rodman. We talked to our insured, and what they said is the exact opposite of what they said, that you came into their lane and hit them. Kylie, can you say that again? All of a sudden, I'm like, let me take, Mr. Rodman, this is what our insured said, and we've determined that you're liable for this accident. Kylie, we need to have a conversation, right? All of a sudden, Kylie's value to me just changed, right? All of a sudden, Kylie has made herself an enemy of your friendly Pastor Ryan, right? And I try to behave and contain myself. I'd give myself like a C+-ish, right? It was okay, right? But I was starting to lose. I started to press into it now, and I started to see Kylie differently. By the way, everybody asked me, Ryan, what happened in the accident? It's midway. We don't know yet. This is still the current status of this accident. I am liable. We'll see what happens, right? So don't worry if you ask me the question. But here's the thing. I began to see in my first conversation with Kylie, man, I kind of need Kylie on my team. She's beneficial to me, right? She's the other. I need her. I didn't think a ton about it, but that was the reality. All of a sudden now she is against me. Now that we are in a different situation now. I'm hearing James in the back of my head, and I'm like, this is a person created in the image of God. Jesus loves Kylie, right? I got to talk myself through it. Because you know how this works. The reality is, while it's easy to read a passage like this, it's easy to say some words and talk about it. When it gets real, it's different. Right? When I got a real human being in front of me that maybe either can offer me a change of position, which is what some of these believers had. They were poor followers of Jesus, very poor. And they were interacting with some rich people who were not followers of Jesus. And these people could change my equation. All of a sudden, they have something to offer me. Right? Now it's different. Now there's skin in the game. This thing starts to sound and feel different and feel real when I've got an actual scenario that I find myself in. Here's what James would continue with. Here's what he says in James 2, as he continues in the conversation. He says, listen, my dear brothers and sisters, has not God chosen those who are poor in the eyes of the world to be rich in faith and to inherit the kingdom he promised those who love him? But you have dishonored the poor. Here's what he's recognized. He's not saying that all poor people have faith and go towards Christ. It's often the poor, though, that feel a need for help and for rescue, right? And so there's a reality to that, for sure. He goes on and says, you have dishonored the poor who are kind of with you and are in the family of God with you. He said, is it not the rich who are exploiting you? In this situation, the rich people were exploiting. It doesn't mean that rich people are evil. There's rich people all throughout the Bible. It says, are they not the ones who are dragging you into court? Are they not the ones who are blaspheming the noble name of him to whom you belong? He's saying, why are you leaning into and trying to gain favor with the people that have this high benefit, and you're disregarding the people that have low benefit to you? You're not seeing things the way that God sees them. He goes on and he says this. He says, if you really keep the royal law found in Scripture, love your neighbor as yourself, he says, you are doing right. But if you show favoritism, you sin and are convicted by the law as law breakers. So let me get this down into a level where we can begin to access it a little bit more. What do I do when I'm interacting with somebody who maybe doesn't offer me very much, maybe of low benefit to me? right? And that sounds kind of terrible at face value, but that's the reality is sometimes people don't at face value seem to offer us very much. It's the person that I interact with in a customer service thing or a blah, blah, or whatever, right? I'm just interacting with a person in a transactional way. How do I import kind of God's view on that situation when I find myself here? Here's some of the challenges that I'm going to face when I'm interacting here. The first one is this: I want to make sure to focus very, very clearly on seeing their value. That I want to see a soul, right? This isn't just a person. I'm not just going to interact with somebody based on a title or a job or a net worth. This is a person made in the image of God that Jesus died for. And based out of that, I want to make sure to give respect where it's due. Give respect. The fundamental decision to show respect to a human being because they're a human, right? This was my challenge in the middle of my conversation with Kylie. Kylie's not my enemy. Even if she's acting like one, she still is a person that God loves. I need to treat her that way. We can disagree. We can be on opposite sides of the thing. I don't even have to like you, right? But I have to respect you. I have to show a modicum of respect because God made you. Right? If somebody's here, right, I want to see them and respect them. And then if there's some form of justice where I have an opportunity to kind of do the right thing, I want to be able to give justice to them, right? If something is owed them, whether it's my respect or a decision, I don't want to just disregard somebody or throw them to the side or say, sit at my feet because that person has little power or little influence in my life. Because this is huge. It's huge. That person at my job that I'm interacting with, it's not just a customer. It's not just the drive-through person at Wendy's. It's not just the auditor. It's not just the title of, that is a human being. All of a sudden, God's view and what he's saying about reality starts to challenge me at very, 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 very deep levels. Well, Ryan, I disagree with how these people live. And you're allowed to. You don't have to agree. You don't have to land there. You might have very deeply held convictions on the opposite side of a spectrum, and yet I want to land in a place where I'm doing these things in response to my faith here. James is going to say, how are you going to call yourself a follower of Jesus and then interact with people based on their benefit to you? Challenging. Those people that don't vote like me, they have low value to me. Okay, slow down. Don't have to agree. But I want to see them the way that God sees them. Ryan, what about the flip side? This may be equally challenging, maybe more challenging in some of the heart of what James is driving at here. What about if somebody can really change my situation? What if I'm interacting with somebody and really they could be a game changer for me? Here's what I would focus on here is not showing favoritism, right? Not showing. I'm not going to snuggle up to somebody and give them extra simply because that they could give me a lot of something, right? Because they could change the game for me. That person that could really move the needle for me doesn't mean that if I'm in a specific role that I don't interact, with certain people more than others. That has to play out. This is about interacting with people and looking and saying, hey, I'm going to interact with you, not really based on your real worth, but based on what you can do for me. And here's where this gets challenging. When I have chosen to need someone, and I've said that is more important than loving them. Okay? This is what I want to get away from. I don't want to need somebody more than I love them. Say, Ryan, explain that to me. How does this work? Guys, all of us have relationships where we are dependent on people for something. And what happens when we're in this situation, I need a job. I need this to work and be harmonious in a friendship or a spouse relationship or a parent-child relationship. And what can happen is when I'm interacting with somebody that I have a high need for them, I need them to support this thing, or I need them to agree with me in this situation, what will happen is I can't interact with that person, right? This person up here who's highly beneficial to me, I can't look at that person and say, you know what, I'm going to do what's best for you, even if it puts what I need at risk. Did you follow that? I'm going to find myself in situations, if I'm in a relationship with somebody who I need, who has high benefit to me, I will end up in a situation where I'm called to love them, even at the risk of losing what I think I need. What does that look like? That looks like having a difficult conversation maybe in a relationship because it's where health is found, even if it causes me to change or lose something that I find highly valuable. The harmony might be broken for a minute. Or maybe there's a supportive relationship. Maybe mom and dad are paying for college, but we need to have a tough conversation. And we need to work through something. Maybe me and my spouse are working through a situation, and I know that if I mess the thing up, it's going to cause difficulty in the relationship. I can't be in a situation where my focal point is needing you at the same time as loving you. So I want to land here where I'm choosing to love and being open-handed about what I need. God, I trust you to take care of this. You fix the harmony. You provide for my financial needs. I trust you to do the right thing. Right? And I land here not in a situation where I'm going to operate and kind of schmooze up for the sake of just getting what I need out of a relationship. This is the ugly, honest truth, guys, of how things operate. If we're going to get to a place of health, we need to see this. Right? That sometimes even justice has to show up. And difficult things need to play out here because it's part of loving somebody at times, right? Where I need to allow a difficult circumstance to play out, even at the risk of maybe not benefiting in the way that I maybe hope to. Guys, these are ugly realities, and this is why James says this. He says, when we operate this way, it's evil, but let's be honest, we all get here at times. Right? Whether it's the Kylies of the world like I talked about or some closer relationship where there's a lot of skin in the game. Maybe it's the everyday person that I interact with and dismiss or disregard. And James would say in all of this, I got to land back here and adopt God's view of the human being. Listen to these passages, right? That speaks to both sides of this. Jesus talking here in a parable, and he says, the king will reply. He's talking about this situation where somebody is loving people. He says, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers or sisters of mine, you did for me. Jesus would look and say, hey, when you fed the hungry, you did it to me. When you clothed those without clothes, when you loved those who didn't seem to deserve to be loved, you did that unto me. Right? Proverbs would say this, right? The wicked accept bribes in secret to pervert the course of justice. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm receiving something from someone that causes me to be in a dependent situation where I'm not free to love. where my perspective is distorted. See, this right here, guys, when I choose to break this line, and I choose to just straight up, like God does, value people because people exist, and they are kind of worthy of respect simply because God says they are, it changes the way that I interact with a human being. Maybe before all that, right? But before I can really understand that, I got to look and see my own situation and recognize what God has given me, right? Because often what comes from here is just a sense of need. Like I want to get something out of a situation, or this person doesn't serve my goals, I'm going to disregard them. Where do I land with this is the question. Here's what I would encourage, right? And something I'm wrestling with, of course, in all this as well. We want to land in a place of gratitude and contentment. To recognize that if this is true, that God is real, that he made me in his image, that he sent his son to die for me, and he has taken care of my life. The fact that I continue to, I can look and say, God, thank you for that. And now I don't have to look around in comparison at others and end up in a place where I'm making these kinds of judgments. I want to look and say, thank you. I'm grateful. Doesn't mean we don't have goals or any of those things, but to say, God, thank you for what you've done, and to recognize that comparison is dangerous for me. I love this quote, Theodore Roosevelt. Comparison is the thief of joy. This one sticks with me. When I look around over and over and it fires up a selfish ambition in me, I can't even enjoy what I have when I start to see what other people have, because I start to compare and it steals joy. I want to land in this place over and over again where I can say thank you back to God. Right, here's another one. Right, I just simply want to adopt God's view of people. This has been the most radically altering thing probably in my faith, is to be able to see people the way that God sees people. That he would look at the high and the low, the accomplished or the lack of accomplished, right? The high net worth, the low net worth, the high education, low net. It doesn't really matter. He's going to look and say, these are my children. These are the creation that I made, and I want them to become my children and be part of my family. And he would look at us and say, do you view people like I do? Or do I tend to view people the way that is described by my world, that says, hey, some people are kind of worth a lot and some people kind of aren't. Some people are really important. Some people I would interact with and I would faint because I interacted with that person. Be amazing. Taylor Swift. I personally wouldn't faint over that, right? But yeah, I would be amazed if I interacted with so-and-so. This person, I don't even care the dignity of knowing their name. They're nobodies. Guys, here's where this gets really, really personal. Are you ready? In order to really do this and land in a place where I'm viewing things the way God views, I actually have to start with how God views me. Because here's what happens. This is so important. Is we kind of buy the culture's definition of value. And so what ends up happening is we start to believe if we haven't done that much in life and we don't earn that much, that we don't really have that much value. And that God doesn't really think that much of me, and he doesn't really care for me. He's not really paying attention to my life that much. He doesn't expect very much of me. But my value is low because I think my benefit is low, or the world maybe says my benefit is low. Hear me. You are not your net worth, you're not your salary, you're not your education level, you're not what the scale says. You aren't any of the things that would create value or lack of value. You aren't any of that. And by the way, on the flip side, it's also true. If you're a CEO or a surgeon or an accountant, you've done very well for yourself and you've got a big net worth, you're not those things either. Because it's all going to go away. And at the end of the day, what the gospel does is it flatlines us. It puts us all on the same footing. Because when Jesus shows up, all of this goes away. And here's the reality. Here's the reality. Right? God never looks at people and thinks, well, that person could really do a lot for me. God doesn't need Elon Musk. He doesn't need Taylor. He doesn't need anybody. He doesn't need Donald Trump. He doesn't need Joe Biden. He doesn't need anybody. He doesn't need America. I love my country, by the way. Right? He doesn't need it, though. He doesn't need you. He doesn't need me. What he has done is he said, I have chosen to love you. Because this is where this gets really wild really quick. It's because now I got to get down there and let it challenge me. And let the value that God has for me, which is gifted to me, listen, not earned. You're not your failures and you're not your successes. Right? You're not your family. You're not you're not any of that. Who God says you are is valuable because he has decided to make you valuable. Here's where James is going to go. Do you believe that? Do I believe that? And it's in my conversations with the Kylies that I get rocked by it. I say, wait a minute, what do I believe here? What do I believe here? What do you believe? If what God says is true, then the people are always the most valuable beings in the room. The high and the low, right? The common and the famous. He's made them all. And he knows all of their needs. And he hears all their prayers. And he knows all of their actions. Hopes and dreams. And by the way, he knows yours. So what I want to do is I want to allow God to raise me up or take me down if I need to be taken down. To be viewed according to the value that he has placed on me. And I can recognize that in God's kingdom, he's good and he's just to his children, and his kindness is overwhelming. When I understand that, then I know how to love people. The person that's highly beneficial rarely interacts with somebody that doesn't just want their stuff or their money, but just sees them as a real person. A real person that can actually really be cared about. The person that has very little rarely is interacted with dignity and respect and is seen for the soul in the image of God that is within them. What James would look at us and say is, when we miss that, we're missing out on the beautiful reality of what God has made. Don't miss it. Don't operate in evil. Adopt a godly wisdom. Adopt that first for yourself and then for the people around you. Guys, I'm going to invite the band up here in a minute, and they're going to give us just a little bit of time. And I would encourage you just to be honest, maybe with yourself. Me too. To really go a level deeper and ask, where do I believe my value comes from? What do I really think this is from? And it's as wrong to have a low view of myself as it is to have a high in an inappropriate way. I want to land where God has landed me, a gifted value based on his definition, not my own. As the band comes up, would you bow your heads, close your eyes with me? We'll pray and worship together. Lord, it continues to blow my mind that you would look at us, and Lord, before we did anything good or bad, right or wrong, you chose to love us and even to value us. And Lord, you know all of our shortcomings and failures. You know all of our successes and wins. And you really look past and through all of that. And you see us, the real person of the heart. God, I pray today that you would help us to receive your love and to believe the value that you have given to us. Not because of any good thing that we've done, but simply because you said and you chose. God, I pray that out of that you would cause us to be a people of love that loves first and most, the high and the low, the lovely and the unlovely. God, would you help us with this? Cause us to see your world the way you do. Meet us here, even now.